Fine then. Let's start. Okay. Just a heads up for everyone. Just in case, since I'm using a Kali Linux machine, Zoom can be a hassle. Just in case you lose my voice or you can't hear me, just let me know either on chat, or you can unmute yourself and let me know if I'm not audible or my screen has stopped sharing. In that case, if when I'm sharing my screen. Yeah. So let's start. Okay, just give me confirmation if my screen is sharing.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, we'll start off with the basics, obviously. So just a disclaimer that the couple of classes that will follow up from now on is going to be a little bit more theoretical, because we'll be clearing out our basics in the field of cybersecurity. After which we'll be going on to a little bit more of a practical approach. The official module that we'll be following is the Certified Ethical Hacker module. So that's what we are gonna flow with. Whereas the entire curriculum that is there for the entire course is available on the link itself. So it will be communicated to y'all. I assume that it has been communicated to y'all by now. So let's start. Yeah. The first thing that we do is obviously the introduction to ethical hacking, in which we'll be going through the modules of information security overview, the cyber kill chain, hacking concepts, ethical hacking concepts, information security controls, and information security laws and standards. Right. So this entire part that we'll be covering is actually serving as a baseline for your knowledge. Is at the end of the day, what we are governed with as cybersecurity engineers is the information security laws and standards itself that we'll be coming to in the end of this module. Is at the end of the day, whenever you are working in the field of cybersecurity, whether you be in the field of SOC, Security Operations Center, whether you be in the field of application security, whether you be in the field of cloud security, or any other field of cybersecurity, you have to adhere to logs. For example, if a SOC is a very blooming field, right? A Security Operations Center. So, what does a SOC analyst or a SOC person do at the end of the day? They monitor logs, they check for anomalies, intrusion detection system, intrusion prevention system, and things like that, right? Now, the laws that they are governed with differs from company to company. If it would have been a company that is an IT company that resides with a law that is called maybe NIST guidelines or ISO 27001 or SOC 2. So all of these guidelines will tell you that you have to retain logs for 3 months, right? You have to retain these specific logs for at least 6 months, and so on, right? Whereas if we would have been in the field of something like payment industry or BFSI sector, if it involves payment card data, we will be following the laws that are stated by Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, or PCI DSS as we call it. So this entire thing right here will serve as a baseline for your concepts at the end of the day. So what I suggest is, be a little bit, take notes if you want to, but even if you don't, this entire PPT or this entire PDF will be shared to you in parts as we go covering our entire lecture. As like on weekends, you'll be getting the PDF as well. Right. So elements of information security. We've done this in the previous workshop as well, where we discussed about something called the CIA triad, or the confidentiality, integrity, and availability triad. Apart from that, there are two more concepts that add to confidentiality, integrity, and availability, which is authenticity and non repudiation. So, any data that is coming to the company is actually governed by these five rules, if not even five. if not, if the company is not dealing with the authenticity of data, if it is not dealing with the non-repudiation of data, CIA is always there. Let's go by the definition. Confidentiality is the assurance that the information is accessible only to the authorized people who have the access to that particular data. In case of, so we'll just have a comparison as to which field we are being able to, we are being exposed to, right? So first comes confidentiality, right? So in case of confidentiality, we have things like IAM, or identity and access management, right? Identity and access management in case of data, in case of access to servers, in case of cloud environments, all of this is maintained inside of confidentiality. And mind you, confidentiality is something that is not a broad term, but it is, at the end of the day, it is fine grained, right? So authority that is generated by confidentiality in case of identity and access management or something like that is fine grained, in the sense that, let's take for example a database. So a database loosely translated, let's say that it is an Excel sheet itself. Okay, so now some applications, maybe the login screen of your application, when a new user registers to this particular website that you are hosting, will given a username and a password, right, that he or she will use in the later run in order to verify themselves and log into your system. So all of this data is written into the database, right? So the application login screen, or the application login screen as a service, should only be able to write into the database, right? The login screen, or the registration screen, will be only able to write into the database, right? Whereas the login screen will only be able to read from the database, right? In cloud terms, we call this db.write and db.read, right? So, and also there's db.view for any page that retrieves data from. So whenever you see something like a page has opened and it shows your icon right there, and when you click on that icon, it shows you your name, your access, or things like that. That is db.view. Those pages will only be able to view data from the database and show it to you on the user interface. So this is a fine-grained approach to identity and access management. Now, why are we doing this at the end of the day? So, so I am why I am spending some time on IAM and not going to the later points is because IAM and confidentiality is the first thing that interviewers look for whenever they are interviewing for a cybersecurity role. IAM is the bare minimum basic towards a cybersecurity role. Now, say we have, made our point, we have to do all of this. Now, why do we have to do all of this? Now, in case of login screen, right? Login screen will only be able to read. What if on the login screen, there's a database, there's a username and there's a password, right? So on username, what do? I enter Arun and I enter my password, which can be anything, right? So what if I tried to run a SQL query, if the database is using SQL in this scenario, select star from something, 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 right? So this is an SQL query, right? Now, if the login screen is being able to write data as well or view data as well, it can run this select query for us, hence leaking a lot of data for the end user as well. So this is something that we follow in case of confidentiality. Moving on, integrity. Integrity is nothing but the trustworthiness of data or resources in terms of preventing improper or unauthorized changes, right? A very basic example of these are WhatsApp, right? People say that, when there was COVID, people actually said that a lockdown for one day will be sufficient because sunlight apparently kills COVID-19 viruses, right? So you won't believe everything that you read on WhatsApp, right? Whereas if any news or any medical news is published on the All India Medical Institute website, you are going to believe it even more because it comes from a trusted source. That is what integrity comes into play. Availability, assuring that the data is available whenever we require it, right? So say if the login screen is asking for a read permission on the database and it wants to retrieve data for Arun, right? Now, if the database is down itself, the data is not accessible to us, the data is not available, hence the application is rendered useless at the end of the day. That is what availability comes into play. Authenticity, just maintaining that the quality is genuine, right, refers to the characteristic of a communication document or any data that ensures the quality of being genuine, right? Certificate of authenticity, as we have heard in a lot of cases, even in case of gold jewelry and things like that, we have a hallmark, right? Even in case of manufacturing, we have a hallmark on a particular device, on a particular thing that has been machined or something like that, to know that this is authentic. This is an authentic diamond necklace. This is an authentic, you know, device that I have purchased, right? So that is authenticity. Non-repudiation, a guarantee that the sender of a message cannot later deny having sent the message, that the recipient cannot deny having received the message, right? So if I am sending you a data, maybe in case of a mail, right? So if you get the mail and you take a screenshot of it, or you save it onto your database or something like that, you can maintain a non-repudiation term that you have received the data because the screenshot is taken from your computer, and they have sent the data because the mail ID shows that this particular person has sent you the mail ID. Now, why did I say screenshot? Because there are revoking facilities as well, right? So you can revoke mails on Gmail as well. As soon as you send someone, you can undo that mail as well. So you can take a screenshot, you can prove that this mail was received, but it was undone later. So the main thing that we focus on is confidentiality, integrity, availability, because without these three, none of the information security controls are enough. Right. So motives, goals, and objectives of information security attacks. So attack is nothing but the motive plus the method plus the vulnerability. Right. So how do we actually? So this is like an arithmetic equation, right? So at the end of the day, it's gonna be numbers. So how do we get the numbers, right? So say motive. So let's take for the definition once. A motive originates out of the notion that the target system stores or processes something valuable, right? And this leads to threat of an attack on the system. Attackers try various tools and attack techniques to exploit vulnerabilities in a computer system, right? Now, motives behind information security: disrupting business, stealing information, creating fear, causing financial loss, hacktivists that are hacking for the governments, right? Uh, Teams like Anonymous who hack to expose people who are corrupt, right? These are all of the things that are very much prevalent. The most prevalent of which is stealing information and manipulating data and demanding ransom or ransomware, as we call it. Coming back, motive or goal plus method plus vulnerability, right? So each and every vulnerability has a score attached to it that we call CVSS score. So that is something that we'll come to later. So let's just say and the method that is used is ranked, right? If the method is very complex, if the method is easy, if the method is directly accessible by the user itself, or the user has to run scripts in order to get into a shell in order to run that particular method, right? This is a score as well. Motive or goal is all of this and the loss that it can have on that particular system. So say motive or goal is stealing data, right? And if that particular data that it is this particular attack is trying to steal is financial data, right? Credit card numbers, debit card numbers, CVVs, right? So these are all of the things that it will steal. Hence, the motive is very high, right? Now, motive is very high. Let's just say that for a hypothetical value, we'll name it 10, right? Plus method. Method is a simple vulnerability exploit of an unpatched service or an unpatched server. Unpatched means not updated yet. So method is easy, right? The easier it is, the higher it will rank. So let's just say that it is 10 as well. Vulnerability that is there on the systems, let's say the vulnerability is very common, something like a heartbleed vulnerability, right? So the vulnerability is high as well. Let's just say that it is a 7. So 10 plus 10 plus 7, 27, right? That is an attack for us. Now, if the motive or goal was to just disrupt business continuity, it won't face any financial losses or something of that sort. So the motive is 5, right? Method is very complex, right? You have to run scripts, you have to run injection methods, you have to run a lot of queries in order to get into the system as well. So the method is very, very tough. So let's just say it's a 3. And the vulnerability that you are trying to exploit is nothing but a DDoS vulnerability where you cannot actually stop a DDoS at the end of the day. Okay. DDoS is going to be there. So let's just say the vulnerability is 3 as well. So 5 plus 3 plus 3, 11, right? So that is the attack that we are considered with now. Now, why do we, have these attacks into place is to prioritize. The first thing that I will prioritize is the attack which has a greater score, right? And then this particular attack, because this particular attacks which have a lower score is rather easy to, resolve, right? Like a DDoS vulnerability. Just install a load balancer and you are good to go. Move it to a cloud environment, put it under a load balancer. You are well and good safe in case of DDoS. Like send petabytes of data, it will not get affected. Right. Classification of attacks. So what are the types of attacks we have in this entire field? Passive attacks. Passive attacks do not tamper with the data. Passive is basically the textbook definition of what passive smoking means as well. You are not directly involved with that, right? You're just maybe standing beside this particular person or you are eavesdropping and things like that, right? So passive attacks do not tamper with the data and involve intercepting and monitoring network traffic and data flow on the network, right? So things like this. I'll give you a quick example. This is on my network itself, but if it would have been on someone else's network, I would have gained access to that. So this is Wireshark. So Wireshark is basically a packet capture utility, right? Any data packet that is going from my computer to the internet or coming from the internet to my computer is registered here, right? So what if I want to see what are the websites that this particular person, or in this case just me, visits on a daily basis, right? So all I do is filter it by DNS records. You don't have to worry about DNS records as of now. Just know that these are some things that are available, right? We'll come to DNS. Just a sec. Yeah. So let's just say I go to my browser and I open something like this itself, Trivago. So I open Trivago. Let's go back to Wireshark. See, I have a lot of DNS records here, and this DNS record actually says www.trivago.in, right? So I get an idea about what kind of things or what kind of websites this particular person visits, right? So if this person visits, say, Facebook on a daily basis, what I can do is or for my next step, I can make a phishing website for Facebook and I can send it to this person, right? So these are all of the things that I can do. Right, let's get back here. I'll close Wireshark as of now. So this was a passive attack, right? There was nothing tampered, nothing went wrong, but I just captured the data. That's it. Active attacks. Active attacks is directly communicating with the victim machine, right? Active attack tampers with the data in transit or disrupts the communication or service between the systems, such as denial of service attack, man in the middle attack, session hijacking, SQL injection. All of the attacks that we see, that we are going to go through when we do modules like system hacking and things like that, it's going to be active attacks. Close-in attacks. Close-in attacks are performed when the attacker is in close physical proximity with the target system, right? Or the network in order to gather or modify or disrupt access to information, right? Social engineering such as eavesdropping, shoulder surfing, dumpster diving, these are close-in attacks. So social engineering, as we know, like phishing and things like that, that is not the only thing that is confined into the concept of social engineering. There are things like shoulder surfing as well. So shoulder surfing is nothing but someone is entering a password on their computer. You stand behind them and you see what the password is and you use it to your use, right? That is shoulder surfing. There's eavesdropping. Eavesdropping is very much self-explanatory by the definition. Whenever someone is having a discussion in the meeting room or something like that, you just stand outside of the meeting room and you gain a lot of information about, say, crucial projects that might be going on and things like that. Also, there's dumpster diving. So, as very much hypothetical as it may sound, but this is actually a true thing that people do as well. So, what happens in dumpster diving is all of these small dustbins that you have inside of the office, right? Especially in the CEO's room or the management room or something of that sort. So, all of these small dustbins are going to have like small garbages, like their Amazon packages that they might have received, right? They receive letters, so you open the envelope, you throw the envelope away, you keep the letter with you. So those envelopes, right? So what people do as social engineering hackers, they go to offices dressed as the staff and clean these dumpsters, right? And get data out of them because each and every Amazon package or each and every envelope is going to contain information about the person that it was sent to. This is how data is collected as well. Okay, insider attacks involve using privileged access to violate rules or intentionally cause a threat to the organization's information or information systems, right? Planting keyloggers, backdoors, malwares, these are all insider attacks coming from inside of the organization or inside of the network that you are part of. Distribution attacks occurs when the attackers tamper with hardware or software prior to the installation itself, right? So what if I want to send this PDF to y'all, right? So what I do is I package this PDF with a malware itself and I send it to everyone. Obviously, everyone is going to download that PDF because it's their study material at the end of the day. And as soon as you open your PDF, a malware gets installed on your computer. That was a distribution attack. I am packaging it with the PDF itself and I am not using any attack vectors, but I am tampering with the software itself prior to its installation. Right. We'll just like breeze through this and then we'll take any questions if there are any. Information warfare is nothing but the current situation that is going on, right? The term information warfare or info war refers to the use of information and communication technologies to gain competitive advantage over an opponent, right? So there are two approaches to information warfare: defensive and offensive, or the blue team and the red team. The defensive information warfare refers to all strategies and actions designed in order to defend against the ICT assets, right? Deterrence, alert, detection, firewalls, intrusion detection system, prevention system, SIEM, SOAR, right? All of these are defensive methods, whereas offensive methods are like malware, man in the middle attack, system hacking, web application attacks. All of the hacks that are performed are part of the official offensive information warfare, right? Inside of an organization, this team is known as the red team, and this team, the defensive team, is known as the blue team. Right. Okay. Are there any questions that I can answer before I move on to the next module part?
Okay. Just wondering what is the DDoS, and I got to know it's distributed denial of service.
Right. So
Okay.
let's say, do you have an idea what is denial of service?
That means denying to provide the service. Is it something like that?
Yeah, it is say for like a human in like a human example, you have two hands, right? Now let's just say that you are very famous, right? And people are coming to you to shake your hand. You have just two hands at the moment. The best you can do is shake two hands at the same time, right?
Yeah.
But if 26 people are reaching their hand out of you, you will be failing to deny the service of shaking hands with that person, right? That is denial of service. In case of computers, denial of service, say this trivago.com, trivago.in, right? It's providing service. I can like click on all of this, right? So every single click that I do is actually a data that is being sent from my computer to trivago.in, right? What if I overwhelm this server with a lot of requests, maybe 300 per second, 400 per second, right? The most common example of this would be your examination portals, right? Whenever examination portals release their results, what happens is the server goes down for a while, right? So that is a denial of service attack. Now, what is distributed denial of service? The attacker comes in and installs malware on hundreds of computers, right? That malware turns the computer into nothing but a bot, right? So nothing is hampered on the computer, no data is stolen, nothing is done of that sort. But whenever these kind of service requests or data packets to overwhelm that particular server is sent, it's sent from all of these computers, right? That is the control that the central person as a hacker has to control this entire botnet that I have created. That is distributed denial of service. A lot of requests coming from a lot of computers. If it came from just one computer, it would have been denial of service attack.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions, anyone? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to know that projects, like which is the first project from the syllabus are we going to do, or how it is? Because I joined little late.
Okay, so no, it's like the project is going to be a little later on.
Okay.
Yeah, it's after the vulnerability analysis module. So that is
Okay.
where we'll be doing our first report. So it's like fair time away. So no issues
Okay.
with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, fine. So let's continue. So the next up we come to cyber kill chain, right? This is the actual representation of what a hacker does in order to get access to a particular system, right? So all of the things that happen here are the cyber kill chain methodology is a component of intelligence driven defense for the identification and prevention of malicious intrusion activities, right? It provides a greater insight to attack phases, which helps security professional to understand the adversary tactics, techniques, procedures, and everything, right? So this is what hackers will use in order to send it to you, and this is what the blue team will use as well in order to secure your particular system, such as reconnaissance. What is reconnaissance? It is gathering data on the target to probe for weak points, right? So things like open ports, things like what are the softwares that are being used, or any vulnerable methods that are being used, or vulnerable services that are used, right? So this is part of the reconnaissance phase that the attackers will use in order to find these services, right? What the defender will do: block open ports, don't allow any particular person to scan, include firewalls, web application firewalls, in order to secure your entire website. These are the things that we will do. Now comes weaponization. Create a deliverable malicious payload using an exploit and a backdoor. This is what the hacker will do in order to, you know, create a malware laden file, right? It can be a PDF, it can be an image, whatever it might be. So as the defense team, this is something that we cannot stop because it is part of the hacker's computer. But what we can do here is the delivery. He or she as a hacker can send the weaponized bundle to the victim using email, USB, etc. Right? If you have seen a sitcom about, you know, hackers called Mr. Robot, or any the random sitcoms as well, you might have seen that an email comes in, you click on the attachment of the email and your computer is affected by a malware, right? What we can do in order to secure these types of emails is, if any unsolicited email comes into the entire environment, it will be flagged as either phishing or malware or something of that sort, and it will be sent to spam, right? That is what we can contain as the defensive team. Then comes exploitation. Exploit a vulnerability by executing code on the victim's system. As a defense method, what we can do is we cannot, we do not provide access to a particular user to run any command as an administrator. Okay. So in organization laptops, as you might have seen, you don't get administrative access. You get a user access to that. The administrator access is with the IT team, right? So God forbid if there is any malware, it won't be able to execute itself as an administrator without a password, right? So yeah, that is something that we can do as a defensive team as well. Installing malware on the target system, right? In organizations, what we do, if we have to install an exe file or if we have to install a software, we have to declare, right? And that particular software will be allowed on your computer using the endpoint detection tool. And finally, you will be allowed to install that software on your computer, right? So anything that you try to install apart from the ones that have been granted access to you will be denied, right? Similarly, the malware file can also be denied. Now, these two steps are actually the attacker's perspective. If these four steps are, become a truth, right? These four steps are successful. There's command and control, nothing but, having control on the system, and actions on objective. It can be taking down the system, it can be stealing data, it can be installing ransomware, whatever it might be. That is the cyber kill chain methodology. TTPs, or tactics, techniques, and procedures. This is once again not part of an examination as per se, but surely part of interviews, right? That is the reason that we'll just breeze through this as well. The term tactics, techniques, and procedures refers to the pattern of activities and methods associated with specific threat actors or groups of threat actors. Threat actors are nothing but hackers. What are the tactics? Tactics are guidelines that describe the way an attacker performs an attack from beginning to end. Right? Say, attackers that created ransomwares have a tactic of ransomware. How do they install ransomware? They send it to the computer using emails. Once a person clicks on that email, it installs the malware. That is the tactic they use, right? What are the techniques? Are technical methods used by the attacker, right? Technical methods like privilege escalation, denial of service, and all of these. And procedures. Procedures are organizational approaches that threat actors follow to launch an attack. It can be running scripts. It can be exploiting vulnerabilities on a particular service. For example, let's just say Apache. Right? These are the procedures that they will follow. All you need to know is the definition of what tactics, techniques, and procedures are, because it's part of some interview questions as well. Adversary behavior identification. So, as we discussed in the workshop, the first classes for CEH or CompTIA include the concept of critical thinking. Right. So, what is critical thinking? It's thinking on your toes, knowing about what is going on, identifying people's behavior and things like that. So this is a slide that relates to that. Adversary behavior identification is identifying anomalies in someone's behavior or someone's computer, right? So say you are from the marketing department, right? And you are going across the marketing department looking at everyone's computer, and you see a marketing department employee running a PowerShell script, right? What does PowerShell have to do with marketing department, right? Or if you are going through the what do you call it? If you are going through the technology department, right? And you go through the technology department checking everyone's computer, and you see that a particular port is open that is not supposed to be open, because the ports that you have allowed is say 80 and 443 for HTTP and HTTPS, right? But you see that port number 7000 is open and it is sending data across the internet, right? That is an anomaly that you can detect. So these are some things to detect about anomalies. It may or may not be a vulnerability at the end of the day or an exploit at the end of the day, but these are anomalies. So what are adversary behaviors? Internal reconnaissance, right? So Nmap is actually a tool that is used to scan networks, right? So someone from the technology department, since they have access to CMD, does not mean that they can run Nmap commands, right? So internal reconnaissance, or seeing that traffic is going to every computer from a particular computer using like leveraging the fact of internal reconnaissance, right? So yeah, that's there. Use of PowerShell, as I said, like unsolicited PowerShell usage. No one, the person that is not supposed to use a PowerShell is or are using PowerShell. Unspecified proxy activities, right? Your data going to another proxy rather than the original proxy that is set by your organization. Use of command line interface, right? Similar to PowerShell, use of command line interface can be a tough time as well. HTTP user agents. So if someone is using a user agent for HTTP, if he or she is not from the development team, even if the development team is there, they might not always use the user agent, right? They will just run it on their local host or something like that. So yeah, that's there. Just give me a second. Yeah, fine. So command and control server, no one should be able to access this and no one should be able to compromise this. Use of DNS tunneling. So tunneling is a concept of sending data and receiving data from a particular server without it being noticed, right? So any tunnel that is created for DNS, or we'll study about DNS a little bit later. So DNS is nothing but it's a domain name system which resolves your domain names such as www.facebook.com to its IP address, because your browser at the end of the day does not understand domain names, right? It understands IP addresses. So you need to resolve that. Now it is, if it is tunneled to another DNS server, maybe if you search for www.facebook.com, it might open a malicious phishing page that is hosted on that particular DNS server, right? Use a web shell, data staging, right? Putting data in their computer or sending data somewhere else. These are all of the things that define adversary behaviors. Indicators of compromise. One of the most important things that we follow, especially in the current time, because machine learning and artificial intelligence is also evolving at this point. So indicators of compromise are clues, artifacts, and pieces of forensic data found on the network, right? Indicators of compromise are not intelligence, although they do act as a good source of information regarding the threats. So security professionals need to perform continuous monitoring of indicators of compromise to effectively and efficiently detect and respond to evolving cyber threats. Let's take an example. So for, let's just say, denial of service, right? Denial of service, we know that there is a server which is capable of handling, say, 300 requests per second, right? Because that is the threshold of it. Say we just have 300 employees or 300 people or less than that actually that will access this particular portal, right? So we have set it to a limit of 300 requests per second. Now, one fine day, we see that it is getting 800 requests per second. That is an anomaly, right? And that is an indicator of compromise for a denial of service attack, right? This is request based, right? If there is a time based approach, so say it is able to handle 300 requests per second, but you see that there are 400 requests per second coming in at the same time, right? So that is a denial of service indicator of compromise, right? Now one fine day, you see that your computer is there, right? Your computer suddenly has a command prompt, cmd open, and then it closes immediately, right? This happens like 5 to 6 times in a day. That is a indicator of compromise that maybe there is a malware on your system that is using the command prompt to assure itself, right? So these are indicators of compromise. Now, why is it very important in the real world? Is because indicators of compromise for, let's just say, denial of service attack itself, sorry, right? Denial of service attack has two indicators of compromise primarily. One is rate more than expected or baseline, right? So say the baseline or the average rate of requests is 300. If it exceeds that, and time more than baseline, right? 300 requests per second and we get 400 requests per second, right? The server is able to handle 400 requests, but it's an anomaly because no one actually accesses this website as frequently as that, right? So rate more than baseline, time more than baseline. So there are tools that use ML, machine learning, and AI in order to detect all of this. So it continuously monitors logs saying that, okay, there's a request, there's a request, there's a request, and so on. If these programs are actually configured with the average rate, it continuously monitors for the average rate, average time, right? And anything that exceeds more than that, it generates an alert for that, right? ML and AI are becoming smart and it's getting involved in this entire process a lot nowadays. Okay. Categories of indicators of compromise. Email indicators. Email indicators are used to send malicious data to the target organization or individual, right? Samples include sender's email address, email subject, and attachment of links. So things like if there's an organization, say xyz.com or xyz, okay. So the official email ID for this organization should be arun@xyz.com, right? So one fine day, if you get so there's another person in the organization, say Varun, right? So Varun one fine day receives a message from Arun saying, hey, this is a PDF file that we require for our purpose, for, say for a meeting. I request you to download it and print it, right? So as soon as they download it, it might install a malware. So what is the first thing that they will see is if it comes from a legitimate email ID, right? Many of the times it comes from, so for example, arun@gmail.com, right? You are not supposed to receive any request from gmail.com inside of an organization, right? These are email indicators. Network indicators, useful command and control malware delivery, identifying the operating system, and so on. Examples include URL, domain name, IP addresses, right? Any request that is coming from an IP address from outside of the organization, right? There is a database of malicious IP addresses as well, so that attackers use on a daily basis in order to hack into particular systems. So those are things that are stored inside of publicly available malicious databases to check for network indicators. Host-based indicators, things like file names, file hashes, registry keys, DLL, mutex, right? These are softwares that shouldn't be there, right? Many of the times, softwares are installed as, say, hello.txt.vb, right? VB is nothing but Visual Basic. So the first attack, there was a attack called I love you virus, right? So you can just do a Google search on I love you virus or I love you malware. It'll give you an entire case study of that. It used to send you a PDF that was named hello.txt.vb. Now, what did the Windows operating system do? It took the first, the first extension and showed it to you like hello.txt, right? Now, the VB is obviously there because at the end of the day, it's a Visual Basic file. It's a coding, it's a scripting language file. As soon as you click on that txt file, the Visual Basic script was run and it encrypts all of your files, right? And it gives you a pop-up message as well. So that is a indicator on a host-based system, right? Your command prompt opening once in a while without you actually trying to open command prompt. Your what do you call it? Your computer having black screens now and then. Your computer. So if you are using a Windows computer, you know that Control Shift Escape gives you a task manager, right? So like this, right? So this task manager will have all of the processes that are running on your computer, right? Now, if I see a process that is running, which does not belong to Windows itself or any of the softwares or services that I am running, that is an indicator of compromise that there is an unsolicited service running in the computer, on the computer, sorry. Behavioral and indicators compromise are used to specific behavior and malicious activities such as executing PowerShell script, remote command execution, and so on. Things that are not meant to be installed on your computer are installed the very next day, right? These are some things that are behavioral indicators. Right. Hacking concepts. Very much self-explanatory right here. I am sure everyone knows about this. Hacking refers to exploiting system vulnerabilities and compromising security controls. Right? It involves modifying system or application features to achieve a goal outside of the creator's original purpose. Right? Hacking can be used to, redistribute intellectual property, leading to business loss and so on. At the end of the day, what is the primary goal for a hacker is money, right? Whether he or she might be a hacktivist, right, or a government-sponsored hacker that hacks other governments and things like that. So they get money from the government. If they are a hacker that install ransomware on someone's system, they might install ransomware and they ask for money instead in replacement of your data, right? I have your data, you give me money and I'll give you your data back, right? At the end of the day, it's always about money, right? Now, who is a hacker? Once again, very much self-explanatory. Individual who has excellent computer skills, right? If he does not have excellent computer skills but still hacks into systems by using methods that are publicly available on the internet like tutorials and things like that, we call them script kiddies. For some hackers, hacking is a hobby, right, to see how many computers or networks they can compromise. For some, it is an intentional job to probe and do illegal things as well. So these are the hacker classes. What are the types of hackers? Black hats, individuals with extraordinary computer skills. They resort to malicious or destructive activities and are also known as crackers, right? So these three, the first three, actually differ in the case of organizations as well. We'll just come to that. White hat is someone who has knowledge about hacking skills and has a data about the person that they are trying to hack. Gray hat is something that resides between black hat and white hat. Suicide hackers are nothing but hackers who to bring down the critical infrastructure for a cause and are not worried about facing jail terms as well. Right? Cause can be, propaganda, whatever it might be. Script kiddies, unskilled hackers who compromises a system by running scripts, tools, and softwares that were developed by real hackers. Cyber terrorists, individuals with wide range of skills who are motivated by religious or political beliefs. State sponsored are individuals that are government employees who penetrate other systems in order to gain top secret information or something like that, something that is out of the movies. Hacktivists are individuals who promote a political agenda by hacking, right? For the very famous example for hacktivist is Anonymous, right? You can go on to Google, search for Anonymous group, you'll get a lot of data about that, right? For an organization in the industry, we use the terms black hat, white hat, and gray hat, but it is in case of an application itself, right? So we as cybersecurity engineers inside the industry, we use something like, say, application security or web application security. Right? The black hat approach of this will be no infrastructure, no infra, nothing is shared. Right? No infra, no details, no specification of what language is being used, right? And nothing will be provided to you. Then there's white hat. The infrastructure will be provided to you, the languages will be provided to you, the port list will be provided to you, and now you can hack into our system. You can check if there are any vulnerabilities. So all information provided, right? What we usually work on, or I personally work on, is on the gray hat approach, right? The only thing that I get is either the infrastructure or the code base, right? Or the IP address and the ports, right? These are all of the things that we receive, partial information, that is, and after which we have to figure it out ourselves. Okay, so we go on to the hacking phases. We will start with this tomorrow because these are things that will require a little bit more of explanations. So yeah, if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
What exactly is the difference between a cracker and a
Cracker and a
activist?
A cracker and a hacktivist.
Yes.
See, cracker is actually the person who is trying to, crack into system. Now, cracker is a term that we usually use in the industry for the people who are trying to gain access to the system through methods which involve the process of cracking, such as passwords, such as usernames, and things like that, right? Whereas hacktivist is a complete set of other users. Hacktivists can be crackers as well, right? Hacktivist is nothing but a motive for hacking. Hacktivists like Anonymous and things like that, they hack into other systems to gain information in order to expose people out of propaganda or for political needs or for people being corrupt, right? So the hacktivist is actually a methodology or a sense of purpose that you follow in order for you to hack a system. Cracker is nothing but a person who is cracking into systems. That's it. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Okay. Any more questions? I take that as a no. So yeah, the recording of these sessions will be provided to you all, and you can refer it to you all or refer it yourselves in your free time. That would be it for today. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great rest of the day, guys.